Welcome to the Treasure Hunt. Monica Davy, the Senior Vice President and Chief Culture, Belonging, and Impact Officer for Vizient, is with me for a conversation. She's an attorney by training and a graduate of Howard University Law School. She's led important work for the federal government in the Food and Drug Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, and the National Credit Union Administration, focusing on equal opportunity in employment, civil rights, alternative dispute resolution, and supplier diversity. She represents Vizient in the Carol Emmott Collaborative, and I'm happy to welcome you, Monica, to the Treasure Hunt. I'm not the only member of the collaborative that has appreciated your clear and helpful perspective on our work of bringing fairness to healthcare leadership. I know you practiced as an employment attorney for a while. Can you talk to us about your choice to go to law school?
Yeah, so this decision to attend law school started at the age of 5. My family tells me back then, I probably have some memory of it, I was one that always loved a good debate, loved to argue, right? Loved to ask questions and to answer questions. I have a not so glamorous beginning to this idea of being an attorney. And I grew up in Baltimore, and I had a great aunt that babysat me before and after school, and probably in the summer times when my parents worked. And she was an avid soap opera watcher. And there was a particular soap opera that she loved, and it was called Guiding Light. So I grew up watching the soap opera. And there was a lawyer on there. His name was Ross Marler. And I loved watching him in the courtroom. And really, it started at that age of being exposed to that, because I didn't have lawyers in my family. My parents didn't attend college. So it's not like I had a lot of exposure to that profession around me anywhere, in my neighborhood, in my family, in my church. It was only through media, right? And so pairing that with what I thought I could do well, that started my desire to go to law school. And Doug, you know, it's funny, when I finished college, I had been saying all my life that I wanted to go to law school. And I had to ask myself, are you going because you said it, or do you really want to be a lawyer?
Right.
And I will tell you, probably more percentage of me going was because I had said it all my life. I don't regret 1 minute of it. I love the skill that it taught me going to law school. I love the way it taught me how to think and how to read and how to analyze. So I don't regret it. But I do think that a larger portion of me going to law school had more to do with me saying that I wanted to be a lawyer, as opposed to really having that desire post-college.
That's a really good point. I do sometimes worry when our 5-year-old selves have chosen our vocation without further reflection. So as you said, you get to that point where you need to ask the question again, don't you?
And I'll tell you, I have 3 college graduates now, and my youngest just graduated from college. She's been saying all her life she wants to be a dentist. And I'm forcing her to answer this question. Do you really want to be a dentist still? Or is it just something you've told yourself your whole life? So take some time to make sure, because it's an expensive choice when you decide you want to go to law school or dental school. So I'm pushing her to do the same thing. And I didn't have that push. So that was another factor for me. Everyone in my family was pushing me to go because I said I wanted to go and because no one else had done it. So I had that extra pressure too in my family of, Monica's going to be a lawyer. And did I want to disappoint people? Right?
Wow.
I'm just letting my daughter know no one's going to be disappointed if you make a different choice. But make sure it's a choice for you and not for other people.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So you worked in the government sector for quite a while. IRS, FDA, these are important. How did you know it was time to move to the private sector?
Yeah, so again, I'm a recovering lawyer. I spent the first 15 years of my 26-year government career at the Department of Health and Human Services. I was an employment lawyer representing the government when employees filed claims against HHS. I struggled with that a little bit, right? Because I attended Howard University School of Law, and at Howard, you're told that no matter what you do after you graduate, you are a social engineer for justice, right? We were all social engineers. And so going into HHS as an employment lawyer, what gave me comfort was that I could make a choice of whether we litigated this case, whether we settled this case, whether a leader or manager needed to be corrected or disciplined or given guidance based on the actions that they took. But I found, Doug, that I struggled with the fact that I was doing work after something had happened. I was defending the government after something broke down, either in someone's performance, in communication, in someone's leadership style. So that's why I made the transition from law to conflict resolution at FDA, and then eventually into the diversity space. Because then I realized that a little bit of time I spent in conflict resolution, a lot of times people are in conflict because they just don't understand how to operate with someone who's different than them, right?
Right.
And that's where I think where the diversity work comes in. I love the fact that then I was able to proactively go into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space and in the government and work on creating spaces and environments where people understood and valued differences and how to lead people who are different than them. And so I did that work at the FDA, at the IRS, and then in the National Credit Union Administration for the next 11 years of my federal career. And it was at the end of 2020 when I was approached by a recruiter who was looking for, at that time it was called a Chief Diversity Officer for Vizient. And I had never heard of Vizient, didn't know a company like Vizient existed. And when I say a company like Vizient, what I mean is a company, an organization that's focused on making healthcare better and more accessible for multiple communities, right? Improving, whether it's improving health outcomes or making hospitals or non-acute care facilities run better. I had a son who was born with cerebral palsy and in kidney failure, and I spent a significant, almost all his life, in a hospital system. And so the idea of a company that was dedicated to making the patient experience better and the family of that patient experience better was really intriguing to me. The other thing that attracted me to Vizient, I had spent the last few years while I was at both the IRS and the National Credit Union Administration trying to get the government to realize the importance of culture. And you do all this work to create a space or to go after people who think differently, who come from different backgrounds or have different perspectives. But if you don't have an environment where people feel like they can be heard, where they're valued, where they can thrive, if you're not looking at your systems and the way you make decisions, which is what culture is, that talent is going to be a revolving door. You're going to spend all this money and energy getting diverse talent in, and they're either not going to stay because you don't have an environment where they can thrive, or you don't have a system where they can have equal opportunity to go through their career. So I love the fact that Vizient, when they first recruited for this job, what they were recruiting for was someone who was focused not only on what we now call belonging, but was also focused on culture. And they saw the value of focusing on culture, and that's what really attracted me to that role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also love the way you framed your vocational calling in terms of point of intervention in a situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting and useful distinction about the legal profession.
Yeah.
Or most of our interventions, in fact, we devote quite a lot of resources to coming in to fix, punish, whatever, change things when stuff is done.
Yeah.
Which is very expensive, isn't it?
It is very expensive. And again, that's what really attracted me about this Vizient role and Vizient's commitment, not just to bringing in people who thought differently and had different skill sets, but they realized you have to intentionally build a culture that you want if you want to be successful in whatever industry you're in. And culture, and I know we'll talk more about culture later, but that focus on culture I think was really important. So my calling was, I got a chance to start off here where I'm defending how people react, whether it's good or bad, to how do you make sure you get different people in, because we know that people who think differently, and when you have teams made up of people who think differently and have different backgrounds, they have better outcomes, to, well, what kind of environment are you putting those people in when they get here? And that's been an evolution of my career.
That's really key, isn't it? And it's key for the work that we're all doing about fairness, because obviously It's one thing to have people with some kind of diversity of thinking, background, that kind of thing. But if you're not creating an environment where they can maximize their own ability to have a voice, to speak up, to be heard, to be a part of that, then that's not going to work very well. That's kind of undergirding what you're saying.
That's right. And at most people's core, they want to be fair, Doug. They do. They want to be fair. That's why you can't just look at whether you or I have a bias. Because even with our biases, we desire to be fair. But our biases override our desire to be fair. They do, because they're just deeply ingrained. That's why you have to look at your systems, right? And that's what's so important about the culture work, that you're looking at, again, how decisions are made. How are you interviewing people? How are people moving through their career trajectory? Those are the systems, because you can't debias my brain and your brain, but you can debias a system. And that's where the whole fairness piece comes in.
Makes a lot of sense. So part of your title is about belonging, and you've talked about that in terms of culture. I've heard you speak of a culture which promotes a sense of belonging. Can you talk a little bit about what belonging is and how we measure that?
Yeah. So for me, belonging is when a person believes and feels and experiences the fact that they're valued and that they can contribute in an organization, right? And the way you measure that, the way we measure it at Vizient, we use, a practical way that we measure it is through a survey tool. We ask questions, and we don't ask people, do you feel like you belong? We do ask that. But that's not enough, because everybody has a different definition of what that means. We ask, do you feel empowered to make decisions? Do you feel valued? Do you feel part of a team? Do you feel that your leader leverages your skill set? And we take all those answers to all those questions, and we come up with a belonging index. And that's how we measure belonging specifically at Vizient. But it's about how people feel as part of an organization. But then you want to get something more concrete than that. What is the effectiveness of that person in getting their job done, and their effectiveness to contributing to the team, and that team's effectiveness to business outcomes? Like, all of those are ways that you can measure belonging.
Yeah. Well, belonging is a funny concept because, beginning certainly in school, and I think elementary school, and it becomes heightened even more in the middle grades and this sort of thing. There are a lot of interpersonal dynamics that affect that, as well as these kind of structural and cultural ones. And I think, what you're saying in terms of, the specifics of the kinds of belonging that you're talking about becomes critical in a business environment, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think where it starts, and I'm excited about the work we're doing at Vizient now, you can increase belonging in your employee base when people understand where you're going as a company, where you're going as an organization, right? So that your mission, your vision, your values, your strategy, those aren't just words on a paper. If someone can see themselves in how I can help Vizient accomplish its mission, its vision, I can see how my work fits into the strategy. I can see that the values that Vizient state are lived by its leaders, and it's something that I can practice. That also contributes to my feeling of belonging. So I think in my role, making sure that I'm working with marketing and brand, right, with the chief strategy officer, so that the language that we're using around our strategy, our mission, our vision, my interest in that is, do employees feel like they can connect to that? Because if they feel like they can connect to it and they have performance goals around how they're going to help Vizient accomplish it, that is going to significantly contribute to belonging. Almost as much as me feeling secure and psychologically safe, and that my manager sees me and values me, and that I can make decisions. So all of those pieces, I believe, contribute to belonging.
Oh, yeah. So it sounds like the credibility of senior leadership, the consistency of action and language
Absolutely.
becomes fundamental to this. Do you
Yeah.
want to say some more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going through some work now and refreshing our values. And it's so critical that whatever we say our values are, that our leaders are exhibiting those values. So you have to recruit for those values. You got to interview for those values. You have to hold people accountable through your performance cycle to those values. Because again, if they're just words on a wall, and we can do that very beautifully, put our values up on a wall, put it on a brochure, if our employees aren't experiencing it through our leaders, then that's going to negatively impact their engagement, their connection to the work, and therefore their belonging, right? I think it's really, really, really important that leaders understand and see this as part of their job. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we call it soft skills for a leader. That's like nails on the chalkboard for me. When I hear somebody say soft, they're not soft skills, right? It's whether it's a client-facing, money-making, all those things that we think are the most important. If you don't have people that are facing the clients, if you don't have people out there who are selling or as your brand ambassadors for what you're trying to contribute to the industry, then you're not going to be successful as a business. So these are critical leadership skills. They aren't soft skills for leaders. And I believe it should be your primary role as a leader to make sure that your people who are on your team and the people who you are leading feel engaged, feel included, feel like they belong, and are engaged. That should be almost the number one responsibility of any leader. Because you're not a leader if no one's following you. The reason why you're called a leader is because we're putting people within your responsibility, right? And so, again, I think the mistake that we make is that we consider that either secondary or fourth or fifth on the list of responsibilities for a leader. And it should be a primary responsibility for a leader. And I think many organizations make that mistake.
Not a nice to have.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Vizient's mission is to improve the performance of healthcare organizations, right? Or something. I don't have the right language exactly, but I think that's the fundamental idea, correct?
It is, but I will say stay tuned for that, because anybody who's listening to this later, we're launching a new mission soon.
Right.
It's still related to making sure that providers can deliver better healthcare, right? That's
all right.
And that's what performance improvement is. We just felt like we needed to be more clear in that. But
okay.
Stay tuned for the new stated mission and vision for Vizient.
Great. I'm happy to have given you a chance to make that clear too. Connect for me the culture within Vizient, what you are aspiring to and what you actually see around you, to that purpose, to the mission, as it were, of the organization.
Yeah. Again, what we are focused on is making sure that providers, our clients, that they can deliver healthcare better. That they can do it in a more affordable way, in a more efficient way, in a more data insight driven way, right? And so our expertise is critical to being able to deliver on that mission, right? Our data insights are critical for us to deliver on that mission. And so if we want to have the best experts and we want to be the trusted guide for our clients, right, and for providers, we have to make sure that the talent that we recruit and those that we are putting out there as experts, that they can work in an environment where they can come up with the best solutions for providers and for our clients. That's where culture comes in. We have to create an environment where these experts that we're putting out there, where they can thrive, where they can work across business units and come up with the best solution for our providers. And in order to work across the organization, you have to have a culture that supports that. It can't be cutthroat. It can't be it's just about me getting my numbers and me selling what I need to sell. It has to be about if our goal is to deliver what's best for the client or for the provider, that has to be the sole purpose and the sole focus. And we have to create an environment where people can work together to get to that. Our data has to be spot on, right? And it has to be something that our clients and our providers can trust. That all ties back to how we make decisions, what are our systems, do we have the best people working in this space, and do they feel like they can work together? And then do we have diverse minds, people from diverse backgrounds coming together to come up with solutions for the healthcare system's most challenging problems?
Right. Well, I appreciate the way that you described the connection between the internal culture. This is something I know I've believed in forever, is really important. But I also, out of decades of working with companies around the world, I found very few companies have had the alignment or the clarity, the logic map, if you will, about why their own internal functioning affects the way they're experienced by their clients.
Yeah.
And I think your description was very helpful in that. Yeah. And that also helps it kind of a segue into, you've been such a great contributor for the Carol Emmott Collaborative, and I really appreciate you've provided a lot of insights, perspectives that have been enormously helpful. I'm curious about the other side. How I know how you're contributing to the Carol Emmott Collaborative and the other members of the organization, but how has the Carol Emmott Collaborative contributed to your work?
Yeah, so I would say in three ways. Having a space dedicated to people who are doing work like I'm doing is just, it's phenomenal to be able to come into those spaces. And you all create both in-person, virtual, and then we have a virtual space where we can collaborate. That, you can't put a dollar figure on that, Doug. I come away from, especially our in-person meetings, because I'm an extrovert and I love to be around people, but I always come away from those meetings extremely energized and charged, and I feel equipped to go back to deal with some challenges that I'm dealing with. Sometimes it's just the mere fact that other people are dealing with the same challenges that I'm dealing with, and we can come together and talk about it. Like, that is invaluable. Yeah. I love that. The other thing that I get from the collaborative is the insights that you all bring together for us, right? The insights that you have about what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the spaces, what's going on collectively among all the members who are there has been phenomenal, and I bring those back, share them with my team, share them across teams. And then the thought leadership that you all bring, right? You all bring in phenomenal speakers. You give us phenomenal resources. There have been some great books that we've delved into and speakers that you've brought there. So I love the fact that I get to do that. In the years past, you all have taken the data of our representation, just what we all look like, and we can compare ourselves to, how other organizations are doing. I love the fact that we were able to do that. So I love the fact that I get to be a member of this collaborative, and I look forward to the continued value that you all not just bring to me as a professional, but that you also bring to Vizient.
Oh, thanks for the feedback. It means the world to us. We have only a minute or two left. I'm curious. I know that you have some commitments. I know to your kids' school, for example, you've been on their board. I know that also, though, for a long time you've been involved with the Kidney Foundation. Would you share a little bit about how you got involved and why that's so important to you?
Sure. My son, I think I may have mentioned this earlier, my son was actually born in kidney failure. And I donated a kidney to him when he was 3. He had that kidney for 7 years. He was on dialysis for a very long time in between getting another kidney. And then my husband donated a kidney to a stranger in what's called a paired exchange. So we call ourselves the One Kidney Club. Like, the three of us all are walking around with one kidney. And the National Kidney Foundation is an amazing organization that's not just dedicated to educating people about how to protect yourself and take care of yourself so you don't end up with kidney disease. It also is focused on innovation and research in the kidney space, and it's involved in how to increase living donors, which is something that I am and my husband is. So it's an organization that's near and dear to my heart personally because of what my family has gone through, but one that I just believe in because I don't think people fully understand, and not to geek out too much, how important the kidney is to your body, right?
Right.
Kidney is critically important, and it's not, I'm not going to say it's easy. I don't want to underestimate it. But if you are aware early enough in tracking your kidney health is something that you can do to preserve your, there are things that you can do very easily to preserve kidney health. Like, just eating better and watching your weight and the food that you stay away from and that you're attracted to and drinking a lot of water. They're really things with enough knowledge that you can do to prevent one from going into kidney failure. So it's something that's very, very, very dear to me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, I always love these conversations with you. I agree. The ones in person are especially fun. But your involvement has been such a gift to us. And thank you for joining me here in the treasure hunt.
All right.
And I look forward to the next time we get together.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Doug.
All right.